Hi, everybody. There's our last week of Chem 230L, and we're um, hoping you had a good time in this lab this year. We know it was a bit weird because we had basically no lab for half of the semester, and we hope you learned something anyway, and hope you got something out of the remote labs that we did for you. Uh, so I wanted to finish off the semester by just saying thanks from both of us for engaging throughout the whole time. Um, we have some pictures here of a Beaker, the yellow lab, uh, from his whole first 2 years of life, and Dory, the black mutt on the right side, um, and some of my favorite shots. And Dory's my dog, and Beaker is Professor Martino's dog, as you probably already know. Um, so this week we're going to do something a little bit different for lab. We were going to do something, looking at data and all that stuff, and we just decided that we tried to do something a little bit different, and we want to look at chemical measurements in a real world scenario. And so what you probably, maybe you realize but maybe didn't realize, is that one of the goals of this lab is to make measurements of chemicals in all different scenarios and for different reasons, and we get different kinds of quantities. Uh, you got equilibrium constants, you got acid base constants, you got um, pKa's, all kinds of different measurements. You also measured the number of ligands attached to a metal. You measured, you did titrations, you did gravimetric analysis using a balance to see exactly how much mass you have before and after a process. You did that with your product that you made, the pink and the blue products that you made, and the organometallic, or sorry, the inorganic complex that you made. And then we also did some more measurements at the and after the break, or after in the uh, in the remote lab situations, where you worked with measurements that we gave you, for instance, the nitrate in the water around Lewisburg. And so I wanted to sort of think about chemical measurements that you see and you're assessing, and thinking about, a lot of you want to be medical professionals, or you want to be, you're doing engineering and biomedical situations, and um, and you're going to be looking at measurements all the time, and you need to be able to figure out, is this a good measurement, or are there questions about this measurement that we need to think about and be very careful about when we're interpreting these measurements and using them for what we intend them for. And so this article came out in the New York Times I think it was last fall, um, and it really hit home for me on this kind of topic. This is all about breathalyzers. And breathalyzers, you might know, I might have seen on TV or whatever, the handheld breathalyzer that a police officer might hold for someone to breathe into on the side of the road. And those are actually not admissible in court, and they're only used to sort of give an initial sense of whether the person might be under the influence of alcohol, and then they can take that person in, and conduct a more detailed test on a much larger instrument, which has two different kinds of measurements at the same time, and it's a little bit better measurement. But an instrument, as you probably already know, the measurements are only as good as the calibrations that are used to quantify them. And so um, this uh, this this article sort of goes through how certain procedures, and how scientific procedures, and how unscientific applications of those procedures might influence the use of, of these kind of devices in the legal system, and what kinds of really long-term trickle-down effects they can have, and deal when they collide with court cases, and they collide with legal argument. So um, we'd like you to read this article. There's a PDF version that's available on Moodle. At the very top of it, there's a link. If you want to read the interactive, sort of more interactive, prettier version on the New York Times website, I think you can get to that if you go through the Bucknell network. I think Bucknell has a New York Times subscription. But either way, you can still read the content of that article and the PDF that we provided for you. There are a few questions that we'd like you to answer and think about, in a few sentences. Don't feel the need to write huge amounts of in response, but we do want you to put some solid thought into your responses to each of those 5 or 6 questions that we have for you. Okay. So course evals are open for on April 22nd until the 27th. So it's open for 5 days. Please sign in to your course evals for Chem 230 Lab, specifically the one for Lab, and do those. These course evals are actually really, really important to us. We want to learn about how you see this course and what we can do to improve it over the longer term. We're still developing this course as everybody is at Bucknell. We all develop our courses continuously. We want to hear back from you and learn what your perspective is on the course and what you feel about it, and so that we can inform our decisions about how we make changes to our course. So our tunes of the week this week, I know you all voted, and the vote ended up favoring Tom Petty, probably a bit of a popularity contest, I'm thinking. As a secret, this was actually Professor Martino's choice or submission to the vote, and or nomination, I guess. And so there's a link to a list of Tom Petty songs that you should listen to. It's quite long. It's a Spotify list. But since I'm giving the pre-lab lecture this week, I'm going to usurp his power and throw in my pick, which was the Tragically Hip, one of my favorite band. They're from Kingston, Ontario. I've selected an album for you as an example of some of their best work that I think. It's called Live Between Us from 1996, and I really like this album. This is a great one. There's not a skip on this album, and so I hope you enjoy it. All right. Well, that's all for us. Thank you again for being an engaged group this year. I really enjoyed working with you in person, and then it's been great to sort of work with people who have been in contact with us remotely. And look out for a little bit of information on when Professor Martino and I will be live on Zoom. You can sign in a couple different times and ask questions or chat about this article that we're talking about this week, and before you submit your stuff. So please look for that, and we'll see you there hopefully. Thanks a lot.